What is going on, beautiful friends and family of the channel? You checked into this video because you want to know the 5 recipes that every vegan should know, and I am going to tell you exactly those. If you want to check out more of my recipes, I have a whole recipe book called Eat Vegan or Die Trying. Go and check it out. I'll put a link below this video. I also have a new beginner's guidebook that's coming out very soon that will also be linked in that website. Now, this first one is a special freezer technique for tofu. So first, you want to take your block of tofu. No need to press it or dry it or do any of that kind of crazy stuff that takes all that extra time. Just cut your tofu into whatever shape you want. Right now, I'm doing kind of like a French fry thing, so I'm doing a side cut and then multiple cuts to cause them to be like French fry shapes. We're gonna put this into a container, a Tupperware, you can put it into a bag or really anything, and we're gonna put it in the freezer. You're gonna let this freeze completely, which probably takes about 3 or 4 hours, so just do it overnight. Then you're gonna take it out and you can let it thaw in the fridge. You can take it out, let it thaw on the counter, or if you really want to, you could like put it under boiling water or microwave it, whatever it is. But once it is thawed, it is now ready to be cooked. Now, we're gonna put this onto a cooking sheet. I have aluminum foil here. I usually use parchment paper, but I actually ran out. Now, what just happened when you froze it is that the water inside of the tofu expanded and caused there to be little holes throughout the tofu. This also caused it to take all the water out, or at least a good portion of it, when it thawed and melted out. This way you don't have to spend your time pressing the tofu to dry it. When you put it into the oven, which you're going to do at 425 degrees Fahrenheit for roughly 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how crispy you like your tofu, it is going to be the crispiest tofu that you have ever made. And this is a problem that I think a lot of people have with tofu, is they just find it to be too squishy. They don't really like the texture. So if you're one of those people, or you're dealing with somebody who's like that, you are gonna absolutely love this recipe. That is basically it. It is a very simple recipe. You don't need to use any oil or anything like that. You can use some non-stick spray to make sure it doesn't stick to the pan. But now you can coat this in sauces. You can dip it into a sauce. You can dip it into ketchup, whatever you wanna do and whatever you wanna serve it with. That's just an amazing technique that I wanted to show you guys. And now we can move on to the next recipe. All right, now this second recipe involves flour. So don't get scared. All of my recipes are always simple. They just might seem a little complicated at first, but I swear once you do this the first time, you're gonna be like, damn, now I know what to do with that bag of flour that's in my kitchen. So you are going to start with 1 cup of warm water. You don't want it too hot and you don't want it too cold. You're gonna mix this with 1 packet of activated yeast. Now I know that's a foreign ingredient, but this is very simple. You're just gonna mix those two with 2 to 3 tablespoons of sugar. Now go on Google and search for vegan sources of sugar, because a lot of sugar that you just get at the store is filtered through bone char, so make sure that the white sugar or whatever sugar that you're using is vegan approved. Mix that together and leave it there for about 5 to 6 minutes. You'll see little bubbles forming. That basically means that the yeast is activating and it is ready for the next step. Now comes the fun part. You're basically gonna take 3 cups of flour. Now, I personally like this best when you use white all-purpose bleached flour, but if you want to be a little bit more healthy, you can use some whole wheat flour. I'm sure you could combine with some other types of flour like almond flour or whatever, but I'm telling you, white flour is the best for this recipe, but feel free to do whatever you want to do. You're gonna scoop in 1 cup, mix it with a fork until you start to get a little bit of a mixture going. Then you're gonna put another cup in there and it's gonna start getting a little bit thicker and form clumps. And then you're gonna start sprinkling in that last cup and build it up until you get a dough ball, and just continue working in all the rest of that cup until you have a dough ball. Now, you're going to knead it for the next, it's up to you, 5 to 10 minutes. It's a little bit of work, but you know, get a little home workout. We're all at home on quarantine, get a little forearm workout, you know what I mean? The more you knead it, the better it's gonna get, because you're gonna develop those gluten strands that are inside of the flour and make it just more hearty and more gummy as you're chewing through it when you do finish baking this later. Once you have kneaded it for about 5 to 10 minutes and you have a nice ball that feels good, you're gonna form it into a nice ball that's nice and smooth, put it on the bottom of the bowl, and cover that bowl in a warm cloth that is like damp with water. Leave that there for about 15 minutes. You could leave it there for 30 minutes or an hour. The longer the better. It's basically just gonna let that dough rise, and once it's risen, it's ready for you to cook into some delicious breadsticks, baby. So now you're gonna take your nice and risen dough ball, sprinkle a little bit of flour on a cutting board and put that dough ball down there. Now you're gonna take a knife, or really could just use your hands, and you're gonna cut it into about 5 to 6 different pieces. Now, I like my breadsticks pretty big and thick, kind of like Olive Garden breadsticks, but if you want them thinner and smaller, you can definitely make, more breadsticks and, divide your ball into 8 or 12 different pieces and just cook this for less time. You're basically just going to roll those breadsticks until you get an even breadstick little like cylinder, and then kind of cap off the ends. And you just want to make sure that it's all even. It doesn't really matter if they're super thick or super thin, because you can just keep checking in the oven and make sure that they don't burn. Now you're going to take your cookie sheet, and again, aluminum foil instead of parchment paper, but if you have parchment paper, use that. Do a little nonstick spray, and then put the breadsticks down there. You're gonna want to spray the breadsticks a little bit with some olive oil if you want to add them a little bit of like some crispiness to the outside. You don't absolutely need to, so you can just skip the olive oil if you want to, but it is gonna add that little bit of crispiness and that little bit of familiar taste when it comes to like a restaurant versus this at-home recipe. Then if you want to, you can sprinkle with some garlic powder just to give them a little bit more flavor, and put them in the oven. Now you're gonna put the oven at 425 degrees Fahrenheit, and you're going to cook them for roughly 15 to 20 minutes. I would check in at about 10 minutes, flip them so that they evenly cook on both sides, but also at 10 minutes you can kind of push on them and see where they are, and you'll be able to tell whether you're gonna need to cook them for 15 or 20 minutes. Of course, you can always open the oven and check as it's going just to make sure that it is, the desired crispiness, but if you do it right, they're gonna be golden brown on the outside, have just a little bit of some hardness, and then once you break into them, they're gonna have this perfect fluffiness on the inside. They're literally addicting. And a good side note is this recipe can be made into a pizza instead of breadsticks. So after you have that dough ball, you can just flatten it out into a big pizza shape, put tomato sauce on it, and make a pizza. It is really good. All right, now for this third recipe, let's hit the brakes a little bit because I know those first two recipes had a lot of steps. It's a little complicated. Let's make something that's simple, sweet, and it's a really, really good treat. So we are going to do hot chocolate. Now, if you're like me, you grew up on those super simple, instant hot cocoa packets that you could just rip open, put some water in, and it's done, except almost all of those have milk, and it sucks because now you just pretty much avoid hot chocolate. But this is the simplest recipe ever. Okay, so this recipe is super simple. Basically, you're just gonna take some cocoa or some cacao powder, and you're gonna use, the formula is basically this: 1 tablespoon of cocoa powder for 1 sweetener used. So I'm using stevia, you can use whatever you want. So I'm doing 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder and 2 stevia. And then you're just gonna add hot water and mix it up, and that is it. You now have vegan hot chocolate. Bada boom, bada bang. If you want to add some milk, you can add some soy milk or some cashew milk to add a little bit of some creaminess, but that is basically it. Now you can make some hot chocolate for those cold nights or for Christmas whenever you're looking at lights or whatever you want to do, because that's what we do. We always make a little hot chocolate and take it with us to watch the lights. Okay, if you still don't want to make your own hot cocoa, I totally get it. My sponsor Viva Life has the best vegan supplements in the entire world, and they actually also have this really cool line called the Magic Line, which is like hot cocoa, turmeric lattes, all sorts of different stuff. And they have this really good hot chocolate that has reishi mushrooms and ashwagandha in it, and it is absolutely delicious. So definitely check that out. Also check out their protein, their greens, their whole entire line is super good, all lab tested, literally the highest quality stuff you can get. All right, now let's move on to the fourth recipe. Now this is the second tofu strategy that I'm gonna tell you. Now, again, a lot of people shy away from tofu because it doesn't have the right texture or it just takes too long to get the water out when you press it and all that stuff. This is another recipe where you don't need to dry the tofu off or press it before you do anything. You're gonna do the same thing as before, cut your tofu into little fry shapes, put it in the microwave, and put it in there for about 6 to 7 minutes, depending on how strong your microwave is, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. But basically what the microwave is doing is heating it up, and it's causing all that water to come out of the tofu. It's gonna evaporate, and some of it's gonna end up on the dish. So you're just gonna pour it off into the sink, and now your tofu has all those nice little holes. The freezer method is a little better, but it does take a little bit more time. Okay, now that your tofu is microwaved, all that water is out of it, it is ready to go into the frying pan, which is another method that you can do. And again, remember, you can do this in any shape you want, but put it in the frying pan. If you want to use a little olive oil, it is going to get a little crispier, but you also don't need to use olive oil. Just use a non-stick pan. Now you're going to cook it in there for roughly 2 to 3 minutes on medium to high heat on each side. So it's going to take about 5, 6, 7 minutes to get all sides nice and golden browned. And then you're just going to add your sauce, whatever sauce you want to use. You can use orange sauce or barbecue sauce, teriyaki sauce. I'm using a nice sweet and sour sauce. And then you're going to turn on the heat to about a low medium, and you're gonna let it simmer in there and let the sauces basically like caramelize. And this is gonna get so delicious. Keep flipping the tofu around so it gets all over the tofu until all the sides are nice and caramelized, maybe even a little burnt if you like to live life on the wild side and eat a couple carcinogens, baby, but it's so good. And that's it. and it's ready for plating. This is a fantastic method as well to getting a lot better texture on your tofu. All right, you've got 4 vegan recipes under your belt. You're basically a vegan seasoned veteran chef at this point. We're gonna round it out with my favorite recipe of all time. Okay, that might be a lie because there's a lot of recipes I love, but this is the 5th recipe. This is my no fat, no oil, crunchy, crispy potato recipe. This is something that people always ask me for. Every time I do my potatoes like this, put it on my Instagram, people are dying for the recipe, so I want to put it in here so I can reference it. All you are going to do is take however many potatoes you want, and you can do any type of potato. My favorite is russet, and we're gonna do about 4 potatoes here. You are just gonna wash them off, cut them sideways in half, and then turn them again and cut it half again, so you have 4 different wedges. Then turn it and cut those into chunks. It really doesn't matter how big the chunks are or how you do this. You just want chunks. You're gonna take those chunks, put it into boiling water, and let it boil for around 10 to 11 minutes. Very simple. I know this is taking an extra step before you get it in the oven, but believe me, this step changes everything. Okay, once it has boiled for that long, you wanna strain all the water out, put it back into the pot that you had originally, and it's good if this is a big pot because now you can add your spices. I'm putting chili powder and garlic powder in there, but you can also add onion powder or thyme or basil or pepper or salt or literally anything that you wanna put in there. And then you are just gonna shake it violently around the pan. Now, because you boiled it, you didn't boil it all the way till it's completely cooked. The inside of the potatoes are still hard, but the outside has softened up. When you shake it around the pot, those outsides get nice and fluffy and create a bunch of like porous areas around the potato. You'll see what I'm saying in the video, but when you do this, it allows a lot more surface area to be made on the potato, and when you oven bake it, all those surface areas get crunchy without needing to douse it in oil. So again, you're gonna put this onto a cooking tray. You're gonna put your oven on for 425 degrees, and you can non-stick spray the pan. If you want to, you can non-stick spray your potatoes, or you can just leave it how it is. You're gonna throw it in there, 425 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes, maybe 60 if you're feeling brazy and you want them really crispy, but then you take them out and they are absolutely perfect. So good as a side dish, so good to serve to like a family on Thanksgiving or like any sort of like big get together, or really if you're just craving some potatoes in a different way. I like to serve them with ketchup, you know me, but you can have it with anything you want, vegan ranch or anything else. But this is one of the best recipes I've ever come up with, and it's really great that it doesn't involve any oil or fat. So there you have it, 5 essential recipes that every vegan should have under their belt. These are all delicious and really just some great techniques that will help you, expand what you can make in the kitchen. And also, we're all in quarantine, we're all stuck in the house, so why not spend a little extra time cooking, get some extra skills under your belt, because I don't know, we have all the time in the world, right? This is a little bit of a different video than I usually do, so if you guys like this type of video, I'd love to do more. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you have any techniques or tips you'd like to add, also put them in the comments below. And again, check out my recipe book, eatveganordieTrying.com. And if you are not subscribed to the channel already, make sure you subscribe. Team Beyond the Week, CT.
Lift heavy or die Myron, motherfucker.
Team Beyond the Week,
CT. Lift heavy or die